open to the public. We opened our meeting at 6 o'clock and immediately went into closed session on a number of items. And I'll ask our clerk to rise and report on those items, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all council. The meeting was order at 6 p.m. in open session with a motion presented and passed to move into closed session. Council received legal advice and provided staff direction respecting.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to begin our meeting with the acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Okay, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof? Okay, seeing none. The brief mayor's remarks, if we don't have a lot going on publicly. Please note the meeting proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. I would like to extend my thanks to everyone involved in facilitating another successful vaccination clinic in Wainfleet on Sunday. My understanding is it was completely full, so that's very successful. Regional Council will meet virtually on Thursday, May 20th at 6:30. We will be raising the flag for Pride Niagara on Tuesday, June 1st at 11:45. Members of Council Okay, Councilor McClellan. Can't hear you. Sorry.
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councilor Fridland.
In favor.
And Councilor Gilmore.
Favor.
Okay, that is carried. We're moving on now to a public meeting. The vacant P01 2021W and Z04 2021W, vacant lot Wills Road. Proposed draft plan of a condominium, vacant land, and zoning bylaw amendment. In accordance with the Planning Act, a public meeting is held for applicants to present their proposal to the public and for council to receive comments from the public. Staff and council will not make a recommendation or decision on the proposal at a public meeting. A planning report will be brought forward by staff and considered by council at a later date. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet in respect to the proposed applications, you must make a written request to the Deputy Clerk of the Township of Wainfleet. Okay, and now planner to introduce the applicant's agent for a short presentation, please. Sarah here. Sarah?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So I'm going to pull up a presentation on my screen, so just one moment and I will share my screen. Okay, so the subject property is located on the west side of Wills Road between Highway 3 and Bell Road. And the property is designated as hamlet within the regional official plan, village residential in the township's official plan, and is zoned Development D under zoning bylaw 58178. The draft plan of condominium that you see on your screen now proposes to create 6 units for single detached dwellings and 1 private street that provides access to Wills Road. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the subject property from Development D to a residential R1 zone, and that's to permit the dwellings for each of those 6 units. Several studies were submitted in support of the applications, including a planning justification report, a hydrogeological assessment, functional servicing and preliminary stormwater management report, a septic evaluation and design, as well as a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment. These studies are currently undergoing technical review, and further comments will be contained within the forthcoming staff report. Before I hand it over to the applicant's agent for a quick presentation, I'm just going to go over some agency comments that have been received to date. So Rogers Communication noted no conflict. Hydro One had no concerns. Bell Canada requested a couple of conditions of approval, and those conditions deal with required easements and conditions about connections to existing Bell infrastructure. Enbridge noted that it does not have gas piping within the immediate area. Niagara Region noted no objection to several conditions of draft approval, and I'll have those detailed in the forthcoming staff report. Those conditions are surrounding clauses for the development agreement that will be required as part of final approval, in terms of the servicing and recommendations of the hydrogeological study, some requirements for waste collection on the private street, and they had some comments about the environmental site assessment and some further soil sampling that is required. The Township Drainage Department overall noted no objection, but did have some conditions regarding an apportionment agreement for the drain that it's assessed to reflect the parcel changes, and formalizing the private drainage outlet, whether that be through an easement or mutual agreement drain. So those are some discussions that I'll be having, and more information will be in the forthcoming staff report. Township's Operations Department also provided some comments and noted that a peer review of the stormwater management report should be conducted, and outlined several conditions of draft approval. And again, I'll have more detail about that in the forthcoming staff report. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to Michael Sullivan, who is the agent representing the applicant, and he has a presentation for council.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
You have, excuse me, do you have a camera ability there?
The host has to, there we go. The host gave me permission. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you. Good evening. My name is Michael Sullivan. Some of you are familiar with me. And I'm representing my clients, Dan and Candace Bunce, who own the property. They're developing this, they're wishing to develop a draft plan of condominium on the property. So I have a very brief presentation, if I may share my screen. I've done a total of approximately 5 slides. This is just for council's information and for any questions. And then I have my main focus will be on comments comments from the various agencies. So we have an application overview, the plan, the comments received and solutions, as well as next steps. So Sarah's done a great job in introducing the plan. I'll just highlight some areas. Got in this area, if you can see my cursor, I've got the by lot, each lot by size. We've got the street locations as noted here. And just my overview is we have 6 lots, each 0.48 hectares or larger, 46 meters or wider for frontages, so they do comply with zoning. These are single detached houses. They're in the condominium format. Street A, you can see over here, actually there, sorry, that we're proposing that as a private condominium street. So right now it's approximately 9 meters in width. Actually, I'm sorry, it shows us 20 here, but that's preliminary. It'll be smaller than that when it's done. And the surface drainage is on site. It's all draining on site here. Next one is just in case there's confusion, we are looking at single detached houses, and not an apartment. And finally, the application overview. Sarah did a great job on presenting that. I won't get into details there. I think I've reviewed all comments provided by Sarah, and just had a few comments on that. Specifically, the township operations, and that was the 2% standard fall should be 3%. Township has also recommended peer review happen for the stormwater management. We're fine with that. That's acceptable. Conditions of draft approval. I have a few comments on that, if I may, and I can go to the next steps. So let's go. My comments for council's consideration. No objection to Niagara Region's comments, its conditions of draft approval, and no objections to Enbridge. I believe my client's got some up-to-date information from Enbridge. He can supply Sarah. The concerns I have, or the comments I have for council's consideration, are regarding operations. Specifically, okay, they've asked for ditch improvements, not an issue. Peer review, that's fine. They've noted about a 300 millimeter diameter pipe on a private property. We would prefer that's addressed through an easement. They've also suggested it could be there could be other tools. An easement is preferred. A catchment in the catchment area, they've talked about a Higginbottom pipe needs to be investigated, identified. No issue with that. My concerns are under some of the conditions of draft approval, Mr. Mayor, specifically that the owner provide detailed engineering drawings for street lighting facilities. Also decorative street lighting and a streetscape plan for the project. I would note that this is, as well as I should also say, actually those are the primary ones. I would note this is a private condominium, and as such, the corporation that eventually takes over management of this property will include the street. And therefore, it will be built obviously to township standards of approval. It'll be less than it will not be a municipal road and will not be maintained by the municipality. So I'm rather questioning the need for the photometric plan for the street lighting, decorative street lighting, and the streetscape. I would think that would be part of. I would ask that council consider not including those or revising them to reflect a private street. And those are all my comments at this point. I just look at next steps and asking for council's consideration as soon as possible. And that's all for my comments. I just want to say thank you very much, and we remain available to Sarah and township staff when and as required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If we have the screen back. Thank you. So before we go to the public comments, are there any questions from councils? Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Sullivan. So I know you have some objections to decorative street lighting and streetscaping. What are you going to put at the end of the road? Nobody knows this road exists. You're going to need some kind of a street light at the corner anyway, and there should be something down there. Do you want to come back to us with you have planned, or to Sarah, so that we know what's going in?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through to Councilor McClellan. Yes, I think an entrance treatment would be certainly appropriate on this, including perhaps some sort of display, some sort of entrance with lighting would be certainly appropriate. We can come back and work with township staff on that.
Thank you. I'm not looking for walls or anything, that curved walls or any of that, just something that we know there's a street there, right? It's a private laneway and there's a light there, so somebody coming looking for them can find them.
Okay, any other discussion, questions? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a quick question, Mr. Sullivan. You said that it's not going to be 20 meters wide, the road, it's going to be 9? Is that what I heard?
Mr. Mayor, through you to the Councillor Van Vliet, we aren't sure where it's going to end up right now. It's going to be less than 20 meters. It's shown as 20 meters right now because of grading purposes, because the road has to be elevated to a certain point. So it's acceptable from a stormwater and an engineering perspective. The fire code, I believe, requires a minimum of 9 meters. And so it'll end up somewhere in between that. I'm hoping closer to the 9 than 20.
Because that was my concern, emergency vehicles. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So this is perhaps the first type of use of condo in the hamlet. I don't think for Mr. Sullivan necessarily, but the details of how this is going to work. Like, are all of the lots that we're creating then considered new lots of record? That's one question. And then what I guess explaining we're going to have agreements now for each individual condo that decides to use, or this developer that decides to use this kind of model. So it seems like it's a bit of a complexity here. And obviously the first one, we'll try to get it as good as we can. But Sarah, is that something that we've got an easy template for moving through? I think there's a few more ahead of us. So you can bring that back in a staff report. It doesn't have to be today. Thank you.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cridland. Yeah, so there's still a lot of details to be hashed out and through conditions of approval on this type of development. Certainly an agreement is required that will guide site alteration and construction activities once final approval is given. But I'll have more detail about that in my staff report. And certainly the conditions of any approval will help mitigate any issues and kind of is a path forward to eventual construction if the applications are approved.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm thinking more about this road in our fire department. So we have no hydrants. I don't see anything in the drawings where we're going to put in cisterns there that we can pump out of, like 10,000 gallon cisterns or something of that nature. So maybe that road actually should be the full width, so that and the standard shoulders on it, so that our water haulers can get in there, because they're going to be backing down there and trying to dump off onto this. They can't pass each other. There's no cul-de-sac. There's nothing. So, maybe Morgan should pipe up on this one, or put his input into Sarah at some point.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking that myself, that we should probably hear from the fire chief on this, please, if he's right there. He is.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. To be quite honest, this is the first of my review. The last pre-con that I attended was in 2018 when it was owned by other owners. And at that time, it was only for 3 residential lots. This plan of condo, I have not had a chance to review, so I don't have a chance to make comment right now.
Okay, so that's something that we'll obviously bring that into the mix here as we move forward on this with staff. Councillor McClellan, you had one more?
No, I didn't expect the fire chief to have an answer right on it. It's just something that I want him to look at, because if we don't make the road wide, don't provide a road that's wide enough to go, at some point I think we'll be liable, or somebody will try and make us liable for a house burning down and nobody getting to it.
So if I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm just looking at the site plan, and I'm just measuring out. It appears that the roadway is going to be approximately 1,100 feet in length. And all of our pumpers carry 1,200 feet. So there would not be any requirement for tankers to access that road. We would be able to set up a relay pump and to maintain the relay at Wills and not have to access the private laneway.
Okay. Okay, anything else from councillors before we hear from the public? Okay, we'll move on to the public portion of this public hearing for the public to have their input. And is there any order, Deputy Clerk, or go ahead, Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through the circulation of the application, notices were mailed to adjacent landowners within 120 meters. It was also posted on our website. That required members of the public who wanted to speak before council this evening to register. We did not receive any requests for registration, so I don't have any members of the public here today to provide comment to you. But I will take this opportunity to let members of the public who are watching through YouTube, that if you have any comments on the proposed applications, to make your written comments as soon as possible so that they can be considered by council before a decision is made. And instructions on how to submit those comments can be found on our website at wainfleet.ca/public notices, or you can reach out to me at planning@wainfleet.ca.
Okay, thank you. So then I'll just announce if you wish to be notified of the approval or refusal of the proposed draft plan of condominium, vacant land, and zoning bylaw amendment applications, you must make a written request to the clerk of the Township of Wainfleet. So that's to the clerk. Okay, so that concludes our public meeting. We have no delegations. And we now move into staff reports, and we'll start. Our first staff report is the fire staff. FSR 007-2021, the Central Fire Station Architectural Schematic Design and Preliminary Cost Consultant Report. And I'll look to the chief.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this report is to provide council a status of the steps that have been taken to date, present the schematic design as well as the preliminary cost estimates that were requested, and then also request approval to proceed on to construction design and contractor pre-qual. Along with me this evening, I have Emilio Raimondo, the CEO of Raimondo and Associates, and David Robbins, who is our project lead. They will be here to answer any questions if there are any. Just to kind of take a quick into the report, you'll see that the current schematic design that's presented is slightly different than the original concept. As the design team reviewed the concept that was put forward from the December 1st meeting, which was the design from Whiteline, we found that there was some movement within the space that we could make that would create a little more efficient construction, reducing the cost. And there were some other items that we were able to make adjustments to. By doing that, we sent it out for initial estimates. That estimate came back, and the design team, we reviewed it again, and we were able to make some suggestions to bring those construction costs down further. So, I mean, as you can see, even with escalation and everything else, we're close. So at that point, if council so chooses, we can move on to the construction design phase, which would allow us to move ahead with the site plan application, which is scheduled for the end of this month. We'd be able to complete all of the engineering, conduct a contractor pre-qual, so that way we can have ourselves in a position to bring it back to council mid-summer, so we can be prepared for tender documents.
Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding that we're going to hear from Mr. Raimondo.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff, Emilio Raimondo here this evening with architect David Robbins from our office as well. First off, we'd like to thank the town staff for having confidence in our firm in seeing your new central station executed. We take great pride in being part of your team. We've been working very closely with Chief Alcock and his staff, and William Colosa, in trying to meet your expectations. COVID hasn't made things any easier, but we're certainly managing, as all of us have been. We've, as Chief indicated, we've taken the conceptual design, excuse me, and made some refinements to it based on our experiences. Ramondo and Associate Architects have had the pleasure of working through a number of municipal fire stations and EMS stations through the years. We're accustomed to working closely with municipalities. And in doing so, we were able to refine the design, make it somewhat more efficient. We've engaged a quantity surveyor, and they've come up with a, call it a schematic conceptual design estimate based on your expectations and that of the fire department in concert with the consulting team. And we found a number of savings, and we believe that through the process, there is the ability to further streamline and find some savings. And we feel quite confident that we would fall within the realm of your approved budget. We'd certainly be happy to answer any questions. David Robbins, the lead architect, is here this evening to oblige any of your questions. And again, on behalf of our firm, we thank you for being part of your team.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move right into questions from councillors. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramondo. My question is, there's a number of rooms in here, and the part in the main office, or the office part, are all those rooms, like, reading through it, it sounds like they all have air conditioning units. Are they all zoned so that they can be shut down in parts that aren't being used? Drop down to a minimum temperature in parts that, because I mean, I think we might have 3 people in this building, probably 2. Do we have to heat all 5,000 square feet and cool that if there's nobody in those rooms? So I'm just wondering if they're on programmable thermostats or something that you could use off of a smartphone to make them so we can save some money on this.
Councillor McClellan, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have had a number of meetings with our mechanical and electrical engineers. They've actually prepared design briefs. We're looking at a number of alternatives, including controls, so thermostatic controls that we can set back temperatures at evenings, and that would relate to energy savings. We're looking at a number of systems off of rooftop units and air handler units that would look at variable air volume. So there'd be some individual control in some of the offices. Yes, we are very conscientious of concerns for energy efficiency and management. And that will extend not only through mechanical systems, but also lighting control. We'll have switches that will turn off when spaces aren't occupied, so occupancy sensors, et cetera, LED lighting, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a question? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramondo. I assume that this document and the costing is still a bit of a work in progress. To be honest with you, I haven't really, since I received it Friday, and I've had a quite busy number of days, I haven't analyzed it, totally thoroughly, but there's a couple of big numbers that kind of jump at me that I don't understand. First one, under electrical site services, I'm not getting my head around 12 light standards to the tune of $90,000. The church that I, when permitted, am able to attend, has 2 and the area is at least 1.5 times the size of the area of this property. So I'm not they're between that and the underground conduit wiring for the said standards. It's over $100,000. Certainly my preference would be to light the heck out of the sides of the building and put 2, maybe 3 triangulated on the property to cover all the corners. So that's a fairly big one. There was one other thing that jumped out was what was the rationale for putting a water meter to the tune of $3,500? I don't know why we would need a water meter because we're supplying all the water. So, I mean, there's probably other things, and I don't want to, we've got a lot to do. I don't want to take a lot of time, but there's a couple of things there without doing too much drilling. I'm already over $100,000. So I'm just, again, I'm hoping that this is quite fluid and we'll have time to keep coming back before we move it too far forward where that isn't in our realm of opportunity. But I would like your comment on the light standards.
You're muted, sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The light standards are a presumption that the cost consultants have made. They received the drawings approximately 3 weeks ago, and they had made some certain presumptions as what they've seen in typical fire stations. The light standards by no means would likely be 12 units. And you were correct, probably 2, maybe 3, if any at all. Ideally, we would like to light the driveways and the parking lot areas from wall packs on the building itself. We do have to do a 0 light emittance from the property itself for site plan purposes, but the building it's centered on a fairly large site, so we should be able to do that even with wall packs. The site lighting plans are not in yet, but I would very, very much doubt it would be 12 units and then the accompanying conduit that 12 units would demand. In terms of, you had one other point.
Well, I've got a couple other ones, but the water meter is a little puzzling.
The water meter is an erroneous presumption, I believe, by the cost consultants.
And possibly, if I could just continue, maybe the chief will have to weigh in. 40 hose bibs in the barn for $10,000. Like, here's the problem. These numbers come to us, right? And we go through them, and all of a sudden, there's another 100 that now it's out there. Like, and so I gotta move forward. I gotta have confidence that the numbers are the numbers, and that somebody way smarter than me, which is most people, have gone, done their due diligence. And then when you can just flip through there and find $100,000, that's troubling for me.
Yes, sir.
But yeah.
Okay, go
ahead. What about
David.
the hose bibs? 40 hose bibs in the barn. What is that about exactly?
That is. Oh, do you want?
Bear in mind, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Gilmore. Bear in mind, this is a preliminary cost estimate. As a benefit of the doubt, is as we proceed, if we were to proceed to construction drawings, we would have a pre-construction estimate, and that would be certainly tightened up considerably. Part of it's interesting, like being aware, part of the site plan approval process engages city staff. So although David did note that it shows there's a presumption of 12 light fixtures, we know we're going to need them at the entrances at 1 foot candle. We can certainly add wall packs, but some of that to some degree might be even dictated by city staff. We've had other municipalities, for example, Fort Erie, that they want to put water meters on every water supply, whether it's brought in or city owned. But that's, you know, if that's something the town feels they don't need, then that's fantastic because it'll result in a cost savings. So part of our diligence over the next few phases will be to continue to evolve the design and look for pragmatic areas for cost reduction. Again, I look at this report based on a set of preliminary drawings and based on some brief descriptions you know, the end resultant may be a few items that have slipped through the cracks in terms of costing. But certainly if the project were to proceed, the pre-construction or pre-tender estimate would be extremely thorough and much more diligent.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Gilmore?
Well, I just want to make sure that the number that's getting floated around is it's got some semblance of accuracy. That's all, because the problem is the public, you know, reads this, and you know and all of a sudden it's you know, it's already out of whack. So as long as we have lots of opportunity before we allow it to proceed to the next level without a lot of additional screening by us, then that's okay. I just you know, I'm just concerned when when things jump off the page like that. That's all.
Yeah, the CAO and I have been having regular conversations. We brief every week on this pretty well and where it's going. He's fully aware of the dollar value that we're trying to eke out here to build this building. Chief and I have had some conversations as well. My sense on this is a fairly templated fire hall per se in regards to the expenses. And then as we move forward, things will get tightened up considerably, much like your lighting, much like the water meter, et cetera. So as the process moves forward, those, you know, we'll have a chance to speak with the chief and the CAO to make sure that we're tightening it up as we need to tighten it up. The thing that I'm concerned about is just with the inflationary costs and everything right now is that we get this thing moving forward, you know, as quickly as we can, because, you know, every couple of months it sits, there goes another $30 or $40 or $50,000 on inflationary costs. So even though we might struggle to save, you know, a couple of thousand here and there, we just spent it by waiting. So that's just my concern. It's been my concern all along. Even from last year, it's gone up. I don't know, what was it, Chief, $200,000 or $300,000 on inflationary costs. So that to me is the big picture to watch. And then we work away at the little things and tune that up and tighten it up as much as we can. So I think Councillor McClellan was next.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the architects. One of the things that I don't see here, and it's small cost, but now to put in, but huge cost to us later. So for the two extractors that we have, the water that comes out, this is on a septic bed. So this stuff is, from what the chief has told me, is toxic. It's, we definitely don't want that going into the septic bed and then going out. I've done site remediation and hundreds of thousands of dollars go out the window really, really fast. So can we get some kind of I don't know if it has to be a stainless steel tank or some kind of a tank that the extractors go into, and then we get that pumped out and trucked away so we don't contaminate the groundwater, our own site, all of that. And I brought this up before. You guys weren't involved in it, so maybe the notes didn't get passed over, but it's something we really need to look at.
Okay, very good point. Okay, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Again, maybe it's not the appropriate time to just explore this section, but just talking about the contingency allowance in general. So again, that's another big number. I don't know what it's based on. Obviously, there's a, it's a percent, but it's not supposed to be a percent. It's supposed to be a contingency that does keep us safe. And maybe it's just commenting on experience on other types of projects like ours, and the contingency is appropriate. So some kind of commentary, perhaps from the architect, if appropriate at this time, that would be great. But otherwise, maybe that's the next discussion again when you get into the better numbers. So I would appreciate anything on that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Quidlin. So given the nature of this particular estimate, the contingency is a little higher. And for obvious reasons, I'd say threefold. Firstly, in that contingency of 12.5%, there is accommodation for design changes. So as the project evolves, there may be things that are added or deducted that may have an implication on cost. So that's sort of covered in a contingency. As the project progresses through to, say, pre-tender, those items would have been resolved, and either we deduct that value and we lower the contingency, or we add additional items such as perhaps Councillor McClellan, and whether it's a concrete tank that we can store some of the contaminants, fluids, that wasn't a line item in this particular estimate. Secondly, one of the issues Mayor Gibson just pointed out is sort of escalation. So traditionally, what we found from year to year is escalation sort of follows cost of living. Generally, escalation runs about 2% up or down thereabouts. But given the current economic climate with COVID, we're finding escalation is somewhat higher, and we're getting numbers closer to 4%. So we've added, in that contingency, we're trying to account for, call it pandemic escalation. And then finally, there would be your standard design, standard contingency. And as architects, we're human beings. We're not perfect, and I'll be the first to admit that. There'll be things that might sneak through the cracks. Generally, with new construction, traditionally we've carried contingencies of 5%. Our firm traditionally has had a very good track record in cost control, and we generally never spend that amount of money. We usually credit those amounts back to the contract. So to answer your question, Councillor Quidlin, that 12.5% includes sort of design contingency for items that we haven't yet perhaps priced, added, or deducted. It includes a Covet escalation margin that's traditionally higher than your 2% margins. And finally, a construction contingency of around 5%. So my take is, at the end of the day, the COVID escalation will be worked into the final pre-tender cost estimate. And then the next estimate, you'll likely only see a construction contingency of likely 5%. So that remainder of, say, 7% will be looked after into the next initiation of the next estimate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McClellan and then the CAO.
You can let Will go first.
Okay, go ahead, Will.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Raimondo, Mr. Robbins, for his team pulling this all together. Again, as was mentioned, the estimates that we're getting, the documents that you're getting are coming to you very quickly. As soon as sort of they progress through our team, we're bringing the information to you to keep you up to date on the progress. I'd also like to thank the chief for his efforts. He's been relentless in trying to identify opportunities or savings that sort of become aware as the information flows through our team. All the sort of issues or all the items that Councillor Gilmore, for example, raised today were items that the chief has already sort of explored with the team, and we are making those modifications as we move. But again, this is a snapshot in time from the agenda that was prepared Friday of last week. In the days since, we have continued working on this. We will continue working on this to refine it and move this forward to try and make the project as sort of cost effective while at the same time giving us the essential fire station that we really, really do need for the township.
I just have one question, if I could ask it. Mr. Raimondo, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, how many fire halls, emergency buildings have you designed and built?
We've done over 8, including some EMS stations, maybe more. We're quite confident. I think we've done one in every municipality in Niagara, except for Wainfleet. We've done a couple in Smithville and Thorold, St. Catharines. EMS stations, we've done them as far away as Oakville. We're involved. We just finished an extensive redevelopment of the Niagara Falls Service Center, working closely with city staff in Niagara Falls. And
so
we're quite confident, Mayor Gibson, we're quite confident of, call it the typology of a fire station, and what's sort of in those types of buildings. I think David alone has worked on, I think, 4 of them. We just finished Fort Erie. Fort Erie was out for tender, and it was awarded to Bromac, and that's under construction. So we feel we have the experience based on projects similar to yours in scope and scale.
Okay, thank you. So my point simply being to the public that we have a very experienced company here designing this building, and the public can be confident that we are benefiting from all those experiences of building all those fire buildings and emergency buildings. We have a very keen eye to the cost. The CAO and the chief and I discuss this, and where we can save money, we're going to save money, and it's a work in progress as it moves forward. But just want to point that out there to the public that the numbers you see are not done yet necessarily, and there's still, it's a piece of work in action, so it may change yet. Councilor McClellan, you did have your hand up for one more question.
Yep. I had a couple of questions. Just I noticed, I know it shows on the plan for future EMS site, but we have no windows on the west side taking any daylight into the training room, the kitchen, or the lunchroom. I'm just asking why. I mean, if you're going to add on to it, you can close the windows at a later date. But in the meantime, we might as well get some daylight and shut lights off.
That's a good point, Councillor McCollum. We can certainly look at that. Absolutely.
And I have one more for the chief. I take it we're never going to have fish fries again, because this kitchen is nowhere near a door that you can get stuff in and out.
So it's my understanding that the community hall will still exist, and if the town permits it, I'm sure the association would love to use the community hall.
Okay, my understanding it was getting revamped and remodeled for something else. So.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, we have a motion. I'll read it. The Fire Station Staff Report FSR 007-2021, respecting the Central Station Fire Station Architectural Schematic Design and Preliminary Cost Consultant Report be received. And that Council directs staff to proceed with the preparation of full construction drawings and all required engineering for the fire station based on the concept design as attached to this report. And that staff be directed to undertake a contractor pre-qualification to predetermine eligible contractors prior to the issuance of the tender. And that staff be directed to return to council with the final construction drawings engineering an updated cost estimate prior to the issuance of the construction tender. I have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Gilmore was first.
I'm just, I'd like to know what you would like, what either the architect, the chief, where's the best way for us to funnel our comments in the interim between now and when we're going to see the next report back for all the concerns? Like, I have several others, but in the interest of time, I wasn't, going to bring them up. But is it more effective to go straight to Mr. Raimondo with those comments, or the architect? How do you, what vehicle do you want us to use? Yeah.
I'll look to Will for that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my recommendation would be funneling that through the chief as the township's, I guess, primary project lead. If you'd like to CC me, by all means, but once it's in the chief's hands, we can make sure that that gets through to the architects and it progresses from there. So again, the chief CC to me or directly to the chief, and the chief will copy me. But either way, that's the best route.
Okay, thank you.
And just to comment on that, having played in that area many times before, single point of contact is the most efficient way to transfer information, because next thing you know, somebody's phoning Mr. Raimondo, somebody's phoning Mr. Robbins, and it just gets messy. So I really encourage direct all information to the chief and CC the CAO, and it'll go from there. So that way it keeps it neat and tidy. So I think Councillor Van Vliet was next, or
no, let her.
No, Councillor McCollum, and then I think
okay.
Anna.
So the only thing I'd like to say is we're putting this out. Figure out who you're inviting. There's no point systems afterwards. There's no nothing. It's low bidder, because this just is what makes it look Mickey Mouse and corrupt and everything else. Figure out who you're inviting, who you want to do the job, invite those contractors, and be done with it. Because this point system, and I scored it, it looks like the guy took you out for lunch or golf or a vacation. It doesn't look right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. So the motion's still on the floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, the third bullet. We didn't spend much time discussing that. Could I please ask for the chief just to explain what that process is then? Is that something that comes back to council for how you're going to do it? Or after today, you do this separately from council? So just expand, please, on that third bullet.
Right. So the contractor prequal, as I said in the report, it's a kind of a risk management tool that's used. It's kind of a request for information, if you will, where we put it out there, requesting contractors, and they provide us their history, their experience, their ability to proceed with a project like this. It is something that would be taken and done and administered through both Raimondo and the township. They have extensive experience in that, and that's a way of making sure that we do have. So when we go to tender, just as Councillor McClellan just said, we know that we're inviting it to 12 companies or however many, we're getting back and we're comparing apples to apples, and exactly what Mr. McClellan said, it's going to the lowest bidder.
Thank you. You've just satisfied my concerns. Thanks very much.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor. It's been moved and seconded, and we're ready to vote. So I'm going to start with Councillor Cridland. In favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. That is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Admin Staff Report 12/2021, Community Flag Raisings and Flag Protocol Policy. And I think our clerk is going to speak to that, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. The purpose of this report is to obtain council's direction on a community flag raising and flag protocol policy and to seek the delegation of council authority for approving or denying requests to the clerk's department. Council has mentioned having a separate community flagpole, and staff have some options outlined in the report and is seeking further direction.
Okay, thank you. So the proposed motion is that admin staff report ASR 012-2021 respecting the corporate flag policy be received, and that council delegate the authority for approving or denying requests for community flag raisings that haven't been previously approved by council within 5 years of the request date to the clerk, and that the list of approved community flag raisings be brought forward to council annually for information and review purposes, and that a community flag raising and corporate flag protocol policy be brought to a subsequent meeting for consideration. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion. Councillor Cridlin.
Thanks for the report. I think this makes things streamlined and efficient, so I can support what's been put forward. Thank you.
And then Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, I'm just looking at the options for the possible new flagpole, and I just want to circle back to an idea that I threw out about the $6,000 flagpole that was proposed at the fire hall, which I actually notice isn't on the list. But at any rate, is there a reason why we couldn't have a wall, like the wall-mounted flag on the town hall for this purpose, rather than put a new flagpole up anywhere? You know, if we put it back by the arena, well, very few people are going to see it, because unless you're going to the arena or the library. So to me, that's somewhat counterproductive to the objective. I'd like to know why we don't put a wall mount on the existing building.
So about a year and a half ago, this issue was up, and we discussed it here at the office. We did look at that option. We ended up just deciding to, at the time, to do in the lobby flagpole to make it easy and simple. Plus, it was only about $100 for the flagpole thing. That was at that time. So, you know, that's what we arrived at. Certainly now it's before us, and we can look at something maybe that's a little more appropriate. So what we have done every time is, and I'm sure everybody knows, is we go out front, we have the flag, we take photos, and then the flag goes in, sits in the pole in the lobby, which is public. And that's the same for everybody. So there's no one to complain that, oh, our flag didn't get any, you know, special treatment or anything like that. So that's what it has been. But, you know, Councillor Gilmore's point certainly valid. We could look at something different. My 2 cents worth. Councillor Van Vliet.
Yeah, I'm just going to agree with what Councillor Gilmore said. I think just a pole, can't we just do like attached to the door, above the door? Is that what you're talking about, Terry? Like just even a hockey stick, make it do. Like that's like $300. There you go.
Well, through you, Mayor. Yeah, just the standard 45-degree one that you mount on the pole, slips in and out. The flags don't even have to come off the pole if you don't want. You can just have them stored. We already know what the current 10 are, and if there's more, or you can simply change it on one pole. I mean, very very cost effective, but putting it in the lobby is about as useful or less useful than putting it back by the arena, especially in the last year when no one's allowed in the lobby. So let's just figure out on our existing building that's visible when you drive by where it can go. Surely it can be mounted on one side or the other of the main entrance of the town hall where the public comes in. That's not any closer to the highway than the existing flagpole or the sign. So I mean,
But what
who
we're
knows?
asking then, what we're asking is simply, we all believe that there is change possible here, and we're asking in the motion that a flag protocol policy be developed for the next meeting. So if we can ask staff to do that, then that's really what we're asking for here. And everybody can have their input. Madam Clerk.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, to all council. So the reason that I didn't recommend the wall mount per se was because typically when we get a request that comes in, they're requesting some type of flag raising, and we'll do a ceremony if we can. So the idea would be that we would have a separate flagpole. We could do the raise the flag, do photos, post the photos, and do it that way. So that's kind of why it would be a little bit tricky to do that if it's mounted up high on the building. So that was the thought there. But it would maybe take away from that.
You can do exactly what we've done, and just instead of mounting it, take the photos and everything is finished, the people leave, and just simply instead of mounting it in the lobby afterwards, we mount it on the pole, put it up, and it's the same thing.
Precisely.
So. Yeah. Okay, so just get the motion is what it was, and mostly to bring back our policy, so everybody can have input with the with any staff if they want to do that over the next little bit while that policy is developed. Any other discussion or questions? Councillor Van Vliet, you had your hand up briefly, or did you're done?
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so regarding the motion, opposed or in favor, Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
And I'm in favor, that is carried. Okay, we move on to the COVID impact report, and we'll look to our CAO, Mr. Kolasa, to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I won't take up a lot of time as so much has happened with respect to the COVID situation, even since the time this report was prepared, that it's becoming fast out of date. But needless to say, as was mentioned earlier, we did have a very successful second COVID clinic at our community hall this past weekend, which was well attended. I guess the only other thing to comment on that is that as the vaccination availability improves, again, there's strong evidence to support or encourage the public to participate, get your shots as quickly as possible, and move forward. That pretty well sums it up for the COVID report, unless there are any questions.
Okay, motion simply being that admin staff report ASR 13/2021 respecting COVID-19 impact report be received as information. Any questions? I see Councillor McClellan has left us. Councillor Van Vliet.
No question. Comment. I just want to let everybody know I've been vaccinated. My husband has. Half of my children have. The other half are booked for Friday. So I just want everybody to get out there, get your vaccine. We'll get there faster when we're all done. That's all.
Yeah, and I'll echo that comment. I had my shot a couple weeks ago, and the faster we get there, the faster we get there. So, we had we had a full vaccination clinic here in Wainfleet on Sunday, which was great to see. So, okay, so we see that report. In favor or opposed, Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Oh, sorry, the clerk.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you just need a mover and seconder to get that on the floor.
Oh, I didn't do that? Oh, okay.
So
Mover
move.
seconder to put that on the floor. My apologies. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor McClellan. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
Favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
And Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Thank you. I'm in favor. That is carried. We now move on to the Summer Lakeshore Area Management Strategy, ASR 14/2021. And again, we'll look to our CA to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. This is a follow-up report to the one that was presented at the last council meeting on April 20th. At that meeting, you considered an initial report, and when you concluded your discussions, passed a motion asking that staff continue with preparations and requested some additional information about various items. So in response to that motion from the last meeting, I can advise that we have continued to liaise with our partner agencies, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the Niagara Regional Police, and Niagara Region itself. And plans continue to be made and refined as we move forward and as the summer season fast approaches. In addition to the sort of efforts we've had with Niagara Region and Niagara Regional Police, I can advise that late yesterday afternoon, staff met with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, who are finalizing plans for some amendments to their operations at the quarry site on Quarry Road. And we anticipate having some information from them probably for the next council meeting. We're expecting the information in, which will sort of lay out their plans and make those plans public. And likewise, accompanying that sort of layout, we anticipate there may be a request coming to council to introduce some more fine tuning of parking regulations in and around the quarry site. So that is all stuff that we anticipate having ready for you at your first meeting in June. In addition to the liaising with our agency partners, there were some amendments made to the traffic bylaw at the last council meeting. Staff have been working hard to implement those changes, including the establishment of new stopping and standing provisions. We've proceeded with the acquisition of various regulatory signs, as well as ticket books and regulatory requirements associated with implementation of those fines. And we are working on those. Another element of the parking bylaw amendment was the resident parking pass or the permit system that council put in place. Staff have been working on bringing a online application process, a sample of which is included in the report. It's small, I'm sorry, but it's still a work in progress as we finalize all the details. But that will allow members of the public to log into the system, order their permits for the vehicles they have on their property, and then we would in turn offer the opportunity for those permits to be mailed out to the individual property owners, or in the alternative, we're also looking at trying to see if we can set up a pickup system at Town Hall. Again, a lot of that will depend on the status of COVID, whether we're in a stay-at-home order or not, but we are certainly finalizing the details on putting those systems in place. In addition to the parking bylaw amendment, there was direction that a bylaw to regulate township beaches and road allowance lake accesses. That bylaw is just going through its final draft review, and we anticipate that coming forward at the next meeting as well. And finally, there's a fairly detailed discussion of our investigation into public washrooms at the Augustine Road lake access. Again, we provide a number of washroom locations throughout the Lakeshore area for the use of people attending various facilities, including the Regional Beach, which we operate on behalf of the region, Reeves Bay, and again, the Augustine Road location. As was raised by Councillor McClellan at the last meeting, there have been new higher standards put in place for the requirements of portable washrooms on various work sites or workplaces. However, in our consultation with Niagara Region and Regional Public Health, the operations manager has received confirmation that those high standards for workplaces do not actually apply to the sort of occasional public use type washrooms that are provided on temporary basis, such as we're proposing here. So with that in mind, we've identified, or we continue to recommend, the relocation of the one public washroom that we offer at the Augustine access, moving it from the Hungry Putter location. And again, thanks to the efforts of Hungry Putter for supporting us. But to address all the concerns we've been getting from the public, the recommendation is to move it closer to the beach access and actually put it on the beach access near the Augustine Road, where the paved portion of the road is. So it would be right at the beach access point at the road. One final item to raise, and it's not really covered off in the report because it wasn't part of the motion. But at the last meeting, the other thing that was discussed was sort of delineation or putting up either barricades or not signs. We had signs last year, but fencing or some other way to sort of try to keep people on the road as opposed to going off the road. Our operations manager has done some exploration and does have some costing for different options there. And again, if that is something that council wanted to provide direction on, we could have that discussion this evening as well. But at this stage, we're here to answer any questions. And if there's any direction that you would like to give, we'll do what we can to assist.
Okay, we'll read the motion first. Admin staff report ASR 14/2021 respecting an update on the strategy for the management of issues along the lakeshore areas of the township for the summer 2021 be received as information, and that staff be authorized to relocate the township's accessible public washroom facility at Long Beach to the Augustine Road Lake access as outlined in the report. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor Cridland. And discussion. Councillor Van Vliet.
Thanks for the report. I think we're way behind the 8 ball on this year, knowing that we're going to have an influx of people. I mean, we've been blessed with cold weather, but it's going to turn warm very quickly. We're 2 weeks away from May 2-4 weekend, and we're 3 weeks away from Beach Day. Do we have any intentions of closing all the accesses because of COVID, or what's happening there? And the other question was, did we get anything back from the region on changing the beach time?
Look to you for that, Will, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to closing the accesses, again, at this time, it was not the townships, or none of the direction that we've had suggests that that's an appropriate way for us to go. Again, with respect to Augustine Road, the road access, it is a public road allowance, and people are allowed to cross and recross. I think we've had that discussion. Moving on to the private property off those road allowances, we've had discussions with, as I said, our partners in enforcement, including the Niagara Regional Police and the Niagara Region bylaw enforcement staff, who play a big role in coordinating responses to COVID-related matters, if you will. And we have developed plans and are continuing to work on plans to respond to any issues with respect to, for example, overcrowding or violations of orders under the Emergency Plans Act that is currently in place. So we are working with those partners to deal with those from an enforcement perspective. But because those beaches are not actually owned by us, actually closing them is not something that we have gone into great detail to explore.
I didn't mean closing them. I meant because of COVID, because we're under lockdown. Like, is there something that we should put in place so people don't come? Because last year it was a cluster muck. I'm just wondering if we can avoid that. And we have May 2-4 and Beach Day coming up.
So again, through you, Mr. Mayor, we had discussions with, for example, Niagara Regional Police regarding the effectiveness of, and Niagara Region regarding the effectiveness of, for example, posting signs saying "closed, do not enter." Other than sort of doing a public relations campaign advising people to stay away, there isn't really a clear mechanism. There is no solution to really stop people from coming if they want to come. When they get here, there is an enforcement sort of protocol, if you will, that we've been working out with Niagara Regional Police in Niagara Region bylaw enforcement to try and deal with those issues when they happen.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Cridland?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, again, I empathize with the challenges we've got ahead of us, but we're still better than we were last year hitting this. So we won't know that till May 24 or June. So, but the couple things, again, I also want to thank the Hungry Putter for, they were part of our solutions before. We're going to keep trying things. I think that's what the public needs to know. We have many things that we are able to continue to, explore and do, and we're committed to continuing to improve the situation. The washrooms that we did at Hungry Putter in the day was an improvement in the day. So the fact that we're going to move them, we believe that's the better solution now. When we do go to move them, I don't recall the exact condition of this particular one. There's the history of old ones not being treated properly. So I'm assuming this is a substantial, much improved from the old story, similar to the Reeves space, similar to the other ones. And if needed, we can then also reinforce that. So we're ready for what's ahead. So that was one thing, just to make sure that that's not where it'll go backwards with the type of infrastructure there. I see everybody nodding, so thank you. And then the other thing is, we jumped ahead with the idea of how we're going to take care of our residents. Our intentions are all obviously going in the right direction, making sure there's spots, and that's not going to go away. But we do have other townships that now have since, explored what they're going to do for their residents. I know we've already agreed on this, but I'll just put it out there. If I'm out of order, that I assume I'll be called on it. But is there anybody interested in revisiting the $10 down to $0? This is a pilot. We have budgeted for this problem. And would that be reasonable at this time? Or is it the same argument? We do the 10 and we see where we're at maybe after it's in for 2 weeks and we see that there really isn't anybody uptaking. So
I don't think that we can deal with that right now, perhaps as other business later at the end of
okay. Thank you.
Right now, we're just dealing with the COVID report. Sorry.
Thank you.
Will, do you have any input there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of expediting the discussion, if it is council's will, I suggest now would be as a good time as any, rather than putting off till later. So I wouldn't get stuck on procedural matters that way.
Okay. Okay, so you're making a motion then, I guess, Councillor Cridland, is the best way to deal with that?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was out of order. We were on the COVID report and I did get...
We're not on the COVID report.
Okay, so we're in the beach part, sorry. All right, so then to make this in order, I guess the motion would be to revisit the the $10 and consider $0 for non-residents.
Okay, so the motion by Councillor Cridland is to take it from $10 to $0. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Van Vliet. Okay, so we have it moved and seconded, and discussion. Councillor Gilmore.
Is it $10 to $0 for residents? You said non-residents.
Sorry, only residents.
Okay. At the last meeting, I was in some form of Zoom limbo land when you guys talked about this whole article. So I really didn't get a chance to weigh in on the costing, but I'm certainly in favor of it being $0. Similar to not charging farmers for burn permits and everything else that needs to be minimalized.
Okay, any other comments before we vote? Seeing no hands up, in favor or opposed of the motion to take it from $10 to $0 for residents? Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor. And
I am in favor, so that is carried. Okay, now we're coming back to the Summer Lakeshore Area Management Strategy. Was there any further? It's been moved and seconded, and any other discussion? Councillor Van Vliet.
I'm still looking for an answer if we spoke to the region on our beach times, if that changed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Nan has been working with staff at the region because we do operate that beach on their behalf. We conduct maintenance, we do cleanups, we do grass cutting, we manage the public washrooms there, and that request has been made known to them, and we are still waiting to hear back from them as to the status of that request. So we don't have an answer yet, but it's something that we have brought to their attention and which is being sort of run up the flagpole at that end.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. And I'm just going to come back again to Councillor Van Vliet's concern about opened and closed. So in the context of our current state, if it was to be extended into the COVID, gray or whatever, I would just like us to be prepared for whatever those activities need to be then to, I guess, enforce whatever measures are required. So we wouldn't be making the decision that the beaches aren't open. The province would be dictating that through its normal whatever protocols. So I think there's some clarity around us being ready to either lift them or put them on. Obviously provincially driven. We did do some of that last year, but are we again more ready with what's required if that's the case? And thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we are definitely more ready this year. Again, we have been coordinating with regional police and regional bylaw, and we have put in specific communications chains so that when we receive complaints or when we are able to schedule actual appearances of patrols, those will be coordinated with the region and with regional police.
And I'll just make the comment to the public as well that, these are complex issues. I mean, the public would say, oh, just do this and that. But for every action, there's a reaction. For every push, there's a pull. And so we have to try to deal with all of that. This is a fluid situation. We've taken a lot of steps forward in the last 6-8 months with staff getting things in place. Do we have it perfect? Not likely. I would suspect that there's going to have to be tweaks and little changes here and there. And then next year will be something, we'll make probably some additions and changes as well. So I just ask the public to bear that in mind that, we're doing the best we can. It's a complex problem. We got lots of areas that we have to deal with, and we're working at it and we're going to get it right, but it's going to take a bit of time. So please bear with us. Who else had their hand up? Councillor McClellan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just one question. So these police patrols of that, they're not paid duties. This is part of so we're not going to paid duty.
Well, that's correct.
Go ahead, Will.
Sorry, that's correct. Last year, the township actually paid to have enforcement officers patrol our area. These patrols that we're talking about are funded directly through the police budget, so we do not pay for it as a township.
And we met with the Port Colborne district commander a week and a half ago and went over everything with him again in response, what's going to happen. They are going to be making a bigger effort to patrol our beaches down here. However, policing is a priority function, and in comes somebody with a gun, and incident with a gun or a knife or human issues take precedence over other issues. So it may not be what it is, but they are going to make a more concerted effort this year. And paid duties it's still there. I mean, we can still look into that. If it gets a little crazy, we may have to, but it's a very expensive venture. So we also had the region bylaw people in on that call as well. And they are committed to spending more time in the Wainfleet area to assist our bylaw officer, Mark, when required. And so they made a fairly strong commitment. So I'm going to hold them to that. Let's make sure that they do get down here, and I'll be speaking with Mark over the summer to see how often they are down. So we've taken lots of steps, and we're hopefully it's going to make an impact on what happens this summer. So, okay, so that motion is on the floor. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, opposed or in favor, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that is carried. Okay, we're going to actually move into the bylaw enforcement staff report now, the Clean Yards bylaw review, and we'll look to our bylaw officer, Mr. Tardif, to speak to that, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our council. Excuse me. This report is in response to last meeting where we discussed the Clean Yards bylaw section 4.5 in regards to inoperative vehicles on properties. It was discussed that there was some confusion in the interpretation of this section, so we were asked to review it. We took this opportunity to review the entire bylaw to make sure that there wasn't that confusion throughout the bylaw. We did have our township solicitor also review the bylaw. There's many housekeeping changes that were made to help make this bylaw flow easier. The major changes, there was a couple major changes. One was in regards to the definitions in residential waste and residential waste, and that was the section for accumulation of fill. We've removed those from that domestic and non-residential waste sections, and we've created a section 5.5 that will deal with that. We still have a definition of fill, but now we actually address what's permitted, what's not permitted, other than just saying accumulations of fill. It's just a lot easier for understanding purposes. Then we move on to inoperative vehicles, which used to be under section 5, but now we've created a whole section 6. But only 2 major changes were done to that. So with that, owners can keep 2 vehicles just like they always were, but now there's stipulated setbacks. You must be 150 meters from a dwelling and 100 meters from a lot line, as well as a roadway. So that will exclude smaller properties from keeping inoperative vehicles on property, and this is township wide. Excuse me. And so if you have a larger property, this really won't affect you. But for the smaller hamlets and lakeshore areas, unfortunately, you will not be able to have inoperative vehicles because you don't meet those setbacks. Excuse me. Same with the old bylaw. If you're missing components, it needs to be covered or screened. That hasn't changed. The other major change was for trailers. Now we can't regulate what people store or have for cargo in vehicles, but we can regulate what it looks like to a certain extent. So whether your trailer is operative or inoperative, if there's cargo in the trailer or materials in the trailer, it must be covered. And that just helps with some appearance issues. It just cleans things up a little bit. We don't have to see what's inside people's trailers. It'll be nicely covered. And then the other regulations were same as before, that you can't keep vehicle parts on the ground and so forth. And because these changes, we've moved from section 5 to section 6 for inoperative vehicles, just cleaned up some language. We just felt it was a lot easier to, instead of just doing an amendment, just call this the brand new Clean Yards bylaw. It'll be a 2021 bylaw rather than an amendment. So those are basically the big items on this. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for council.
Okay, thank you for that report, and we'll go right into questions. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Tardif, a question that's going to come up, so I'm going to ask it for you now. Sea cans, trailers, do they got to be painted? And they hang around with all the numbers on the side of them? Where do we stand with that?
So that's a building department function. back in.
Technically, they're a trailer.
Unfortunately, sea containers. Supreme Court of Canada ruled in 2019 that sea cans are a building. They meet the definition of a building, and they do require a building permit. That's coming from the Supreme Court of Canada.
Okay.
That's a building department function.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mark. Mark, that email that you sent us with the pictures, just quite helpful. Just a question on the third one with the trailers.
Yeah.
The obviously empty trailer, not a problem. I get that. The one with the ATVs on it, if the ATVs are licensed, they wouldn't need to be covered. Is that correct?
No. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilmore, anything that's stored in a trailer will need to be covered.
Okay, but if it's not inoperative, if it's licensed and insured.
But it's cargo of the trailer. This is where we can't be subjective to what is acceptable and what's unacceptable. It could be vehicle components, or it could be nice ATVs. Some people don't want to see ATVs. Some people don't want to see car parts. If there's something in a trailer, it just needs to be covered.
Okay, but if I have an open trailer like is shown in the third one, it's okay. If I have my side-by-side on the trailer, it's not good. If it's off the trailer in front of my shop on the grass, it's good because it's licensed. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's not making sense.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because once it's off the vehicle, it's a vehicle. When it's on another vehicle, it's cargo of that vehicle. That's where the confusion is lying in a lot of what's being stored in trailers. No matter what the item is, once it's in a trailer, it's cargo of that trailer. It's not a vehicle, it's not furniture, it's not car parts. It's cargo of the trailer. As soon as it comes off, then it becomes either a vehicle.
Thank you. Councillor Van Vliet is next.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, my questions were kind of along the same line as Councillor Gilmore's. So if we have a trailer, which most people in Wainfleet do, cargo is anything? Like if we have like a load of mulch that we're not getting to for 3 days, we have to cover it, but we can't cover it with a tarp.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Van Vliet. No, tarps are acceptable coverages for trailers, not for cars.
Okay, second part of the question. I don't agree with that part, so we may have to revamp that because sometimes people have trailers sitting around because they can't get to whatever they're going to do. It's got to sit there for a couple of days, right? It's parked beside our garage. We don't look at it. The other thing is the inoperative vehicles. The pictures that you had emailed us, there was a picture of a car and it's missing a fender. It doesn't have a license plate. So your car's sitting there and you want to work on it, but you're waiting for that part to get shipped to you. You don't have anywhere to put the car. You don't have access to a garage. You can't cover it with a tarp. What do you do with it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it needs to be covered. You just need an appropriate car cover. It just can't be covered with a tarp.
Okay, I get that. I just think this gives this is too open-ended. Like there's too much ammunition here for neighbors who aren't getting along. We might have just added a little bit more for them to not get along. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Anybody that's going to leave a quad or anything loaded up on a trailer is probably the night before they're going away. If you're going to leave it out in your driveway and for 3 days or 5 days, you're likely not going to own the trailer or the quad when you're on the 5th day, right? I mean, that's just common sense. So I know this, my one question I have a note here, we are still reactive, not proactive, right? So Mark's not going around and doing anything. So yes, I'm going up hunting and I load up my trailer and I've got my quad on it. I've got a bunch of stuff on it. The next morning, I fully expect it to be there and nobody's going to rat me out for one night. And when you come home and if you're beat on Saturday night or Sunday night when you get home and you leave it till Monday night, I really don't think a neighbor is going to rat you out or give you a problem. And if Mark was to go to somebody's house and they said, hey, I was hunting for a week, I just got home, I don't see I would like to think that we have enough leeway in this to go with it. Same with Councilor Van Vliet's thing about mulch. You usually have a trailer with some sides. If you're carrying mulch, the mulch isn't going to stick up that much over it from the road. Most people will never see it. It's, you know, and if you got it, everybody knows you're not going to leave mulch in the trailer for 3 months. So it's a couple of days. I think we got to allow Mark to use some common sense on this thing, but we have to have this rule the way it is. I am more than happy with what he has there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Well, I have concerns about it. 150 meters is an awful big distance in my mind. I just, when I was reading through it, I thought that was excessive. The other points about, you know, the loading and the trailer and it's licensed, it's not licensed. I mean, the spirit of what we're trying to do, we're off track. We're getting, and I want to first of all compliment staff, because it's just like the beaches. It's hard to come up with the proper stuff on this. So to our bylaw officer, and I know to our to Lee Gudgeon as well, and everyone who's worked on it, this is really hard to come up with. So I just want to make that point first of all. But there are some things in there that I went through and I thought, you know, we're getting into the nitty gritty, into the weeds here too much, and it's going to be hard to deal with. I totally agree with Councillor McClellan being complaint driven. Many of these issues will never surface. However, if I've got a hate on for my neighbor, I make the phone call first thing, and then the bylaw officer is at, you know, the person's door next day. So that can be an issue. Most people know, but it can be. So I'm not totally comfortable with this yet. I think it needs a little more tweaking. So, Will, did you have your hand up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to comment that, again, staff are doing the best to interpret the sort of broad direction that council has given. There are, I guess the intent of a clean yard bylaw is to reflect general standards that the community as a whole wants to have for their community. You know, we are doing what we can to interpret those based on what we're hearing back from you, hearing back from members of the public, and trying to present a sort of a balanced approach. As Councillor McClellan indicated, you know, when the officer gets a complaint, he needs to have a tool to be able to deal with the sort of ongoing, continuous issues, and we're not really intended to target the sort of short-term 3 days of mulch. I mean, if the officer were to arrive on the scene, speak to the member of the public who has the trailer of mulch, receive information that I got the mulch and I'm going to be spreading it next weekend. Thank you very much. Just so that you're aware, long-term, you can't sort of have mulch on your property for 6 months at a time if it's sitting on a trailer as cargo. So I think it's a balancing point. It establishes the framework, and again, staff are more than willing to go back and try to rework it if that is the direction of council. But the other thing is the direction. If we could get some sort of specific idea of what changes you'd like, we could do that much better in sort of responding to those.
Well, okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just point out that the 150 meters was already in the old bylaw, and I only requested that the appropriate conjunctions be put in section 5.4. So we already had those rules prior; they just weren't being enforced, and it didn't read properly. So I'm happy with where it is. I mean, just other than, you know, a few other things that are a little weird, but as long as it's complaint driven, I'm with Councilor McClellan. I'm fine with it. And as I said, all I really wanted was 5.4 grammatically correct.
Okay, so any other questions? I mean, of course, in a year from now, and you know, you can always come back and revisit it if needs some tweaking. It's one of those ones that is probably very hard to get right the first time. But I mean, I know how much staff's been working on it, so there's things in there I'm concerned about, but I'm willing to push it through, and you know, we may have to come back a year from now and retweak it. So any other discussion or questions? Okay, not seeing any. So the motion would be that bylaw enforcement staff BESR 006-2021 respecting a review of the clean yards bylaw be received, and that housekeeping revisions and a revision to inoperative vehicles to the new Township of Wainfleet Clean Yards bylaw number 16/2021 be presented to council for ratification. Mover seconder on that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Gilmore. Any further discussion? Okay, opposed, Councillor Van Vliet.
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, is there any way we can tweak the meaning of cargo, or are we just going to leave it open as whatever's on a trailer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Van Vliet. The reason that we did it that way is we just don't want it to be my discretion of what's okay, what's not okay. It's because for me, I'm a car guy. If there's a car on the trailer, it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But other people might have problems with it. So to keep it very biased in general, if there's something in the trailer, it needs to be covered. And that way it takes all discretion out. And it just simplifies everything. If there's material, if there's cargo items, material in the trailer, obviously, as Councillor McCullen did say, when I do my inspections, I do have a conversation with homeowners to find out what their intention is. If it's short term, I'll be back for an inspection in a week or so, and nothing happens. I come back and we deal with it that way. But if it's still remaining, then we move on and it goes forward that way. So there's lots of working with the residents in that. But just to keep things simple, if there's something in a trailer, it needs to be covered, and that's the easiest way to deal with that.
Okay, I can live with it as it is because it's complaint driven. We'll just have to see how it all works out in the end. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, so just to agree with Mark here, I think the green and white, so the MTO calls anything that's in the trailer cargo. They don't care what it is. If it's inside a trailer, it's cargo, and that just keeps a nice standard across the board, so somebody can't make arguments with him. He's right. He has to do a job, and nobody wants to say it's his discretion that I let it go, or he's playing favorites.
Sure.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay. Yep. Opposed or in favor? Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And I am in favor. Okay, we've been at it for almost 3 hours. We're going to take a short 5-minute recess, and we'll come back in 5 minutes on the same Zoom station.
Okay.
waiting for 2 councillors, and then we'll continue. And so we will carry on. Drainage staff report. DSR 009-2021 agreement on share of assessment 2709998 Ontario Inc. And I'll look to our drainage superintendent, Mark Jemison, to speak to that, please.
Great. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So drainage staff report 9 is in response to the planning application to sever and adjust the boundaries of a property that's assessed to the Big Forks in the McCallum municipal drain. The township typically completes several apportionments under Section 65 of the Drainage Act each year, like this one, to maintain up-to-date assessment schedules. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'll read the motion. Drainage staff report DSR 009-2020 respecting apportionment agreement 2709998 Ontario be received, and that the agreement on share of assessment attached hereto as Appendix A be approved, and that the agreement on share of assessment attached hereto as Appendix B be approved. Have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. And is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. A recorded vote. Councillor in favor or opposed? Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. That is carried. Award of tender for the Bridgewater Drain, DSR 10-2021. And Mr. Jemison, we give your overview of that one.
Great. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So drainage staff report number 10 is recommending the award for the tender for the construction of the Bridgewater Municipal Drain. Tender was open for 2 weeks, closing on May 5th with 4 submissions. Fulsome review of all the submissions was completed, and the recommendation is to award the tender to the lowest submission. This type of drain report and the associated construction costs are billable and eligible for grant from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. The township portion of this project includes 3 new road culverts and was initially approved in the 2020 capital budget and then carried forward and approved again in the 2021 capital budget. Impacted landowners have been involved in the costing estimates to date, and appeals on the costs were heard at the Court of Revision on December 15th, 2020. Construction of this project will occur this summer.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CAO, Will, is there something that we wish to do on this one? Or is it the Indian Creek?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to the drainage superintendent, but again, we are recommending awarding this to the lowest tender submitted.
Okay. So in the motion then, it speaks about Anthony's excavating. I need a little guidance here, Will.
Well, I can help you.
Through,
Go ahead, Terry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, in light of the options presented, I would move that we choose option 2, award the tender to an alternate bidder, that being the lowest tender submitted.
Okay.
So that would be CRL Campbell Construction.
That's the motion. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Seeing none, opposed or in favor, Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
I'm in favor. That is carried. Okay, award of tender for Indian Creek, and have the overview on that one, please, Mr. Jemison.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So similar to the last report, drainage staff report number 11 is recommending the award for the tender for the construction of the Indian Creek drain. This tender was also open for 2 weeks, closed May 5th with 4 submissions received. Staff recommend awarding the tender to the low bidder, Anthony's Excavating Central Incorporated. This type of drain report and the associated construction costs are billable and eligible for grant. Township portion of this project includes 3 new road culverts and was approved in the 2021 capital budget. Impacted landowners have been involved in the costing estimates to date, and the appeals on those costs were heard at the Court of Revision on February 25th, 2021. Construction of this project will occur this summer.
Okay, thank you. So the motion being drainage staff report DSR 011-2021, respecting the award of a tender for the Indian Creek Municipal Drain 2020 construction be received, and that council direct the drainage superintendent to award the tender to the construction of Indian Creek Municipal Drain to the lowest bidder. Mover and a seconder for that, Councillor McClellan and Councillor Cridland. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, opposed or in favor, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
That's carried. Moving on to the fire staff report. First quarter fire and emergency services review. Chief Alcott, will speak to that, please?
Yeah, good evening again, Council. This is just the review of the first quarter of the fire department operations for 2021. Outlines the administration, human resources, fire prevention, public education events, emergency service operations, an update towards the apparatus and equipment managing, as well as our training programs that we have ongoing, and outlines the priorities for the second quarter. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, motion being the planning staff report PSR. Oops, sorry, wrong one. The staff report FSR 006-2021 respecting 2021 first quarter fire emergency services review be received for information. Mover seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion or questions? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to the chief. Again, great report. I would like to just know what the plans are, I guess, across the whole association for the education component that we're missing out on, obviously through the COVID conditions. But it, like all other areas, is it actually creating some opportunities? So I was really happy to see the insert in the taxes. Are you finding that other departments are coming up with some innovative ways to actually continue with education programs? Thank you.
So there are some events that other departments are doing via social media. They're creating videos, that kind of thing. We have partnered with a couple of departments within the region through our fire prevention teams, and I think some of those videos have been sent out. Initially, we tried to get into the schools, but that wasn't permitted. and now schools are closed indefinitely. We have shared some of the materials virtually with the schools. Whether or not they share them, that's I can't speak to that. But certainly, we're looking for every opportunity available, and once things open back up, we'll be excited to get back out there and share the message.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, motion's on the floor. Councillor McClellan, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
And that is carried. On planning staff report 007-2021, required municipal improvement associated with the DSBN and NCDSB joint elementary school project. And we're going to look to Ms. Ivins, our planner, to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to all of council. So as council is aware, the District School Board of Niagara and the Niagara Catholic District School Board have initiated a project to construct a new joint public Catholic elementary school at the St. Elizabeth school property located at 31950 Sugarloaf Street, so just behind the municipal offices. Through their preliminary design stage, the school board has proposed use of the township's laneway within the municipal recreation complex to provide construction access, as the plan is to keep the school open during construction of the new school and then demo the existing school during the summer break. And so in order to allow the existing school to operate during the school year, the laneway would provide construction access to Side Road 20. And they've also proposed a possible permanent use of that laneway for bus traffic. So to create a bus loop that would come in from Side Road 20, do a loop around the parking lot and back out to Side Road 20. So the laneway in our complex is shown in Appendix A of the report. And permission to use the laneway is required from council, done through a formal easement and agreement requiring costing, liability, and maintenance responsibilities. So if council supports in principle the use of the laneway, staff will work with the school boards to negotiate the agreement and bring that back to council for final approval. Also noted in the report is that the laneway does require some improvements, as well as some improvements to Side Road 20. And at this point in time, I'll hand it over to Richard Nan to discuss those improvements.
Thank you, Sarah. Through your worship to members of council, the existing large ditch that's on Side Road 20 is actually part of the consolidated South Wainfleet drain number 10. We've noticed recently that we have some embankment issues that are starting to slide. But because of the increased traffic that we're expecting due to A, construction, and B, the permanent use and the increase in families that will be using the new school with the combination of the three, we're recommending that we investigate the enclosing of that section of ditch by the Heritage Park area because of the hazards that we're anticipating trying to eliminate in future. But in order to do that, we do have to go through the drainage process and the Drainage Act, and we're recommending that council name Spreet Engineering to allow us to move forward with the Section 78 to assist us in the design of the enclosure, as well as we'll be working, as Sarah mentioned, if the will is to permanently use that laneway, we'll be working with the school board to permanently do some improvements to that laneway for both benefits at the same time.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor McClellan.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Nan. How far north from that driveway are you looking to close that in?
Through your worship to Councillor McClellan, we are actually looking just from the driveway right up through until Park Street, or just past Park Street, where the drain actually crosses the road again, and it goes down towards the feeder.
Okay. No, I'm just curious how far you're going. And so you're probably, for the time being, I would take it you just want them to put some more stone on that laneway till construction was done, and then you could figure out if they're going to keep using it, whether they pave it. And probably have to pave that side road as part of it too, so it doesn't get, side road 22 there, so it doesn't get destroyed from that point north.
Yeah, through your worship to Councilor McClellan. Yeah, part of the negotiations, once the school board has done their initial studies and their reviews, and they'll be presented to Sarah. If it requires them to use it on a permanent basis because of recommendations they may receive from the MTO, we will consider potentially doing storm sewer outlet is to allow for some of the drainage as well as some of the improvements to laneway. And we're anticipating, due to the condition of side road 20, as you've seen in one of the appendixes, we recently did a cross culvert. The foundation or the base of that road isn't very good to begin with. We're looking at about a foot of topsoil and then clay with minimal cover. So we're anticipating during the construction portion that side road will get damaged, and we will be waiting until construction of the school is completed, and then we'll be looking at the summer following to potentially reconstruct that road, and it may include removing base as well, not just a shave and pave.
Yeah.
But we'll see what kind of damage we sustain after construction takes place.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, the construction that's going to be done at St. E's, there's a few questions here. Do the residents alongside Road 20, there's a lot of children that live there, a lot of little children. Are they all going to get notices that this is going to happen? That's question one. Question two is, can the construction trucks come down Abbey and then south on side road 20 as to not, be going past those houses all the time where all the kids are playing and where the paved part is, keep them on the stone part?
We can definitely, during our discussions that Sarah will be having in future, as well as ourselves, with the school board, we can actually try and work out a deal that we can use that as the construction route, a haulage route. And we can try to verify with the school board that they can use that as well for the haul route rather than coming through feeder and then down side road 20.
Okay, perfect. And my other questions were, well, the announcements to residents, which I'm assuming is going to go out. The Quonset hut, you had the roads going straight through the Quonset hut. What happens with that?
Well, the Quonset hut is actually on the south side of the laneway. It shouldn't be affected. It is off the laneway portion, but it shouldn't be affected. And as the construction takes place, we'll be maintaining that roadway during construction at all times because we still have potentially, if things open up, we will have soccer and baseball and everything during the summer months as well. So,
okay. Yeah, my biggest concern was just maybe rerouting those trucks so they're not going through the village. And I think it might be hard to make the turns anyway, as opposed to coming down Abbey and then up 20. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Sarah had her hand up there. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's something, because they require a site plan approval, that's something that we can put through in an agreement and have them identify construction routes ahead of time. So that's certainly something that I will consider through the review of the site plan application once it's received.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, and then Councillor McClellan and then Councillor Gilmore.
Yeah, just on that Abbey Road, I've watched it over the years. It doesn't take much and it breaks up. It is worse shape than side road 22. And it's fresh tar and chip. We'll be doing it again. So somehow we got to make sure that we're covered under that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gilmore.
Just two things. Despite Councillor McClellan's concern about Abbey Road, that's got to be the way. I mean, we don't want them coming through Park Street by the library, or getting, half of them will get turned around and go in Sugarloaf and start doing U-turns. Like, trust me, I see all kinds of weird stuff every day. And we just got to make it, that's the way it's coming in. It has to be part of the deal that whatever roads get damaged, then they have to fix. My second question to Richard is, are you considering making the laneway at the end of this a proper street? And we'll just have another street into there.
Through your worship to Councillor Gilmore, we've talked about various things, making it a laneway, a fire lane, an actual roadway, or just leaving it as an agreed to path for the school to utilize our property. I think for the easiest portion would just to have an agreement with them to utilize the property and to assist us in the improvements. But there are different ways we can look at it in the future. We just haven't considered that at this point. We're just trying to move the project or the school along the best we can to assist them, and then we can look at that for future.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
No, that's fine. I just was wondering if you're considering making a street. No,
Right.
I'm all for this. We need to get this done. And
so I'm sure many of the watchers, the viewers out there are wondering who's paying for all this. Is the school board putting in some funds towards this, based on the fact that it's the school? So perhaps we could have a bit of a discussion here on that. Just Sarah or Richard, who could speak to that, or Will, or do we even know yet?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so we don't know that yet. That's certainly part of the negotiations in terms of any agreement and permission that we give to the school boards to use the laneway. We can look into cost sharing for some of the improvements that are required to our roads.
Okay, good. Just thought we should get that out there. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll put the motion, planning staff report PSR 007 2021 be received. Oh, sorry, Donna.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. You've got lots to watch. So again, echoing a lot of the comments we've heard, though, that laneway, I hope we're looking long-term that is going to be viable. I would want to do anything we can now to cut off the Sugarloaf Street conflict, but it would seem that with the MTO study, that's all going to come out. But if we have a way to correct the conflict that's currently there now with something that can be improved. I would like to, to push the envelope and explore those now with the school board and get that traffic where it should be. And it, again, Councillor Gilmore talked about what the kinds of things we're about to see with the volumes of trucks going through this. That's just going to be the start of it. Then we've got buses forever. So, if we can think long-term on this, that would be really, really good in terms of that road. Thanks.
Yeah, just along those points, it's cheaper now to make it the way it needs to be, what we might suspect it will be in 10 or 15 years. It's much cheaper to do it now like that than, in 10 or 15 years. So, okay, if there are no further questions, I'll have a go at the motion again. Okay, seeing none, that planning staff report PSR 007 2021 be received, and that council support in principle the use of the township's laneway for construction and bus access to the new district school board of Niagara and Niagara Catholic District School Board Joint Elementary School located at 31950 Sugarloaf Street, and that council appoint Spreet Associates Engineering under the Drainage Act to facilitate improvements to the consolidated South Wainfleet Drain number 10 and Side Road 20. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. Opposed or in favor? Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
And Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Thank you. And I'm in favor. That is carried. Public Works staff report, contracting out services postponed from April 20th meeting of council. PWSR 008 2021. Mr. Nan, Richard, would you speak to that, please?
Through your worship, again, this was introduced at the last council meeting. There was a numerical error that we've made corrections on, and we're presenting it for information for council's consideration.
Thank you. So motion being that the Public Works staff report PWSR 008 2021 respecting contracting out services within the Township of Wainfleet be received for information. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Van Vliet, Councillor McClellan, discussion. Okay, so report receiving. Okay, no questions. Opposed or in favor? Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
That is carried. Councillor Cridland.
I just wanted to acknowledge we went through that very quickly. I know there was an awful lot of work put in that by staff, so I did want to acknowledge that we have this in front of us now, and thank you for that. So that's all. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you very much. Okay, moving into PWSR 009-2021, the site alteration bylaw, and that was also postponed from the April 20th meeting of council. And we'll look to Mr. Nan to speak to that as well, please.
Thank you, Worship. As directed by council back quite a few meetings now, we've prepared a similar bylaw in respect to something that was from another municipality as directed. We've made some alterations. We've had a review by our legal staff, and I want to thank Jennifer for doing that as well. We've made a few alterations and changes, but we're leaving it for discussion and some further input from council to make any necessary tweaks to the bylaw prior to us drafting a final copy. We know it's a very important document, and we want to make sure we get it right. So we're presenting this to council as a draft for consideration.
Okay, thank you. So motion being Public Works Staff Report PWSR 9-2021 respecting site alteration bylaw be received, and that staff be directed to finalize the attached site alteration bylaw in the Township of Wainfleet for the next available meeting. A mover or seconder to put it on the floor, please. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor Cridland. And discussion. Councillor McClellan.
I have a lot of issues with this. One of them is if you go to page 10, there's a certificate. It asks for a certificate of general liability for $5 million. There isn't 10 people in this town can get that certificate. And it'll just stop everything from happening. Some obvious, like I know to get filled out in Wainfleet, you just don't, the guy, if there's a job going on, how long is it going to take us to get a permit for this? How long you get a phone call and maybe you're going to get filled in 3 days. It's not, you can't take 3 weeks to get this. Or if you go ahead and get this thing, that $5 million bond is probably going to cost you somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 to hold it for a year. People can't afford this. And since I put this forward, I have found out there's already provincial government rules in place to take care of this, and they work, and they've already cleaned up 2 sites in Wainfleet. I'm starting to think we don't need it. If this is where we're going to saddle our people with, I'm starting to think we don't need this at all.
Okay, thank you. Comments, Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. I think maybe rather than derail it at this point with everything that's been done, I would recommend that we appoint a subcommittee of council to work with staff, and that Councillor McClellan and Councillor Cridland be appointed to that subcommittee to just work through some of these other details, and fine tune it along with staff and the solicitor, and bring it back to the next meeting, whenever that is. I don't think it's of imminent importance, although I don't want to drag it out either, because we don't want what happened in Flamborough and several other areas to happen here. I don't think that's where we're at, but I still believe that it has merit. I just want to make sure that that we've got all the bases covered. And I guess further to that, if it's appropriate to name a layperson from the agricultural sector, without going through this great bureaucracy, then I would suggest that someone be appointed accordingly to just spend a couple hours sometime and flesh this out. That's my recommendation.
Okay, and also it would be also important for the information that Councillor McClellan just surfaced about there's provincial laws already controlling this, to flesh that out as well to make sure that, you know, we're ending up with the best product we can. Okay, so that's a direction, I think, to Councillor McClellan and Councillor Crillon. Would you be willing to stand on that committee? Councillor
By all means. By all means.
Councillor
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Where do you want to go to, Jerry? You can't go.
I don't want to go.
You can't go. It can only be two.
You had your hand up, Sherry.
I did. I just wanted to maybe we could add to the website. If anybody has any fill questions, like put the MOE on there and the MTO, who they can call if there's a problem. In the meantime, while this is getting sorted out, I think this needs to be done. And the two people who have been working on it can see it through.
So if I can, so the information I've found out is if you see somebody dumping fill, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, you call the MOE emergency spill lines. You tell them they're dumping fill. And the only thing they do ask is that somebody follow the truck so they know what site it's coming from. So you would have to, you know, if they're dumping in your neighbor's yard, Cherry, and you'd have to follow the truck and find out it's coming from ABC's topsoil sales or it's coming for an old industrial site. You call them, they call the MTO green and whites to the inspectors, and I was told they will be there within an hour. And they've already cleaned up 2 sites in Wainfleet in the western side. And the MOE comes in and you clean it back to final the way it was before you started. So
okay, thank you very much.
That's the provincial government can do. That's why I say I don't know we need it.
Yeah. Okay. So then we'll make that a motion that Councillor McClellan and Councillor Crillon form a subcommittee and do research into the fill bylaw and any amendments or changes to it. Okay, that was Councillor Gilmore's motion. Is that okay, Councillor Gilmore?
Yeah. Can the CAO comment whether it's appropriate to name a lay person, or does that trigger some great bureaucratic process that we have to post for?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you leave it as broad as you just indicated, then yes, it creates a broad bureaucratic process. If, however, you were to suggest that perhaps a member of the Drainage Committee, which is representative of the agricultural community, which is representative of the I guess drain and fill side of things, that might expedite it, and then you could have that committee simply appoint a member from amongst themselves to sit.
And so they could pick a member right away and put them on the subcommittee with the 2 councillors and the staff. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I think we could make that happen. If you want to add a member of the Drainage Committee at the discretion of the members of the Drainage Committee, they could from among themselves appoint a rep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what we need.
We'll get Meredith to add that in. That's why you're the CAO right there, Will. Councillor Van Vliet.
I was just going to say, as co-chair of the Drainage Committee, I can do that. Or Will, do you do that? Like, talk to the people on the Drainage Committee.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's something we can do through the Clerk's Department starting tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor to form that subcommittee. It's moved and seconded, and opposed or in favor. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And that is carried. Okay, we're moving on to Public Works Report 10, 2021, reward of tender for Town Hall roof replacement. And we'll look to Richard to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, to yourself and members of council. This was in regards to a tender that we placed out for public viewing as per our procurement policy. Unfortunately, we did contact 10 commercial metal suppliers that do this, but unfortunately, we received one bid, and the bid was extravagantly large, much higher than we anticipated. We did contact the bidder, and they did say it was due to the COVID costing and material costing in the construction industry right now. So staff has actually started looking at alternative products, including potentially a rubberized roofing, rubberized shingle, or composite thereof, something that's going to provide us with a 50-year guarantee. That's what we're looking for, the longevity. So staff are recommending that council direct us to prepare a second RFQ to potentially find some savings and look for an alternative roofing material to gain us the longevity we need with a 50-year warranty at a lower cost to try and save some money.
Okay, so motion, Public Works Staff Report 10, 2021, respecting award of the replacement of the Town Hall Council Chambers roof be received, and that council directs staff to prepare a second RFQ package to seek alternate style roofing that can include rubberized roofing that provides a 50-year warranty. Mover seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, Councillor McClellan and Councillor Gilmore, and discussion.
We keep it.
Okay, Councillor Van Vliet.
I just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Richard. So this rubberized roofing we're talking about, is that the shingles? Is that the flashing? Is that the eaves? Is that everything, or what are
the? Through your worship to Councillor Van Vliet, we will be part of the project. We'll be looking at replacing the eave troughs, the flashing, anything the associated, including putting down a waterproof membrane on the entire thing. We'll be removing the cedar shingles and putting a whole new roofing system down to protect or to seal that roof completely from future. And that includes flashing at the dormers and everything.
Okay, I'm not sold on the rubber roofing. I'm a firm believer in metal. So we'll see what you come back with. But thanks.
And interesting enough, along that same line of thinking, I would hate to see rubber roof be exact same as fiberglass bridge decking, you know, which we are looking at, and we're not happy about that. And it was supposed to be a revolutionary material at the time. I too would be very much in favor of steel. It's definitely guaranteed 50 years, and it's been around for a long time. It's not a new product, so I have concerns about not steel. Councillor McClellan.
Just so you know, that fiberglass bridge decking was an experimental thing. It wasn't approved by the MTO. It wasn't approved by anybody. It was sold to the town and the town engineer at the time.
Okay, but the point being, as
I know what you're saying, but if it's approved, it's approved.
Okay. Okay, so that's the motion is on the floor and seconded, and any other discussion on the rubber roof research, et cetera, seeing, Councillor McClellan.
So you're going to check out this rubber roof. You're going to put it out again. You may get somebody that is out of work by the time this comes up, and metal will not be as high as the price you got. It's how much work people have. And I don't know how big a company we had to go look at, because Stoke is not a little company. I don't know if the mid-sized roofing guys were allowed to bid on it, which means we pay.
We contacted 10 commercial metal roofing companies in the Niagara region and a couple outside, including Flynn, but we only managed to get one bidder.
Yep.
Okay, so opposed or in favor if there's no further questions? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
And Councillor Cridlin.
In favor.
You in favor as well, that is carried. Moving on to correspondence. 115-2021 Lakewood Beach Development Municipal Responsibility Agreement for Ontario on-site water and wastewater communal systems. Is there any discussion on that correspondence that we received? Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I had asked that this one be pulled. Again, you know, just sort of to keep the light on what's happening with this particular development. So we're now, obviously, lots has passed. I wonder if Sarah can just maybe provide an update. I was looking to have something that sits on top of this legalese that they're going to try to, I mean, they say this isn't going to fail. So, or very unlikely that this system, this septic system isn't going to fail, but it's the first one that the Niagara region has ever done. So I'd like just a letter that sits on top that said any solution or any remedies that they think they're going to use to solve this in the future are limited to an on-site remedy. So just something that just says we're watching. So whatever, you know, when this fails, even though it's unlikely, but the point of doing these exercises is that when it fails, that, you know, the solutions will be within the context of the condo and they'll be on site and they won't impact the township. So I was just looking for something that sat on top if there's an appetite to send a letter along with our, you know, the response or the acknowledgement to this correspondence. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to make a motion? Would you like to make a motion on that, or?
Well, maybe Sarah could just comment that's making sense in terms of what I've asked for. It's obviously brief, and we can attach it and forward it to whatever the department is that we forward that to.
Okay, Sarah, could you speak to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So certainly if council wishes to send a letter acknowledging that the agreement has been executed and that, as Councillor Cridlin mentioned, that, you know, going forward, we're looking at, you know, this is an on-site thing. And I can work with Councillor Cridlin in terms of the language to be contained in that letter, but that is certainly something that we can do.
Thank you, Sarah. Then I'll make that motion that we proceed with some kind of a letter with that context. Yeah, so I'll move that.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor McClellan. Is there any other discussion? Councillor McClellan.
Just one quick question. So our only responsibility of this is to send out in the tax bills and collect the money and then hand it over to the region. Correct?
Well, that's what it says.
That's all I want to make sure. There's nothing that what I read or the way I read it was right. I'm looking for a confirmation. That's all.
So
okay, so
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McClellan. So yes, that's correct. In the event that the region steps in and has to operate this system, we would be acting as the money collectors for any fees of the residents within the condominium. So.
That's the way I read it, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so any other questions, comments on this? The motion is, as per Councillor Cridlin, to forward a letter to the region with our expectations, and you work out the language. We have a seconder on that, and Councillor McClellan. So opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Cridlin.
Favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
That is carried. Moving on to correspondence 135-2021, cannabis licensing and enforcement. Is there any discussion on this issue? With the letter from Port Colborne, and I'll look to our CAO has his hand up. I'd like to speak to it, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this item of correspondence was flagged as it is an issue that is facing a lot of municipalities. And the Township of Brock has actually taken the initiative to propose a motion requesting the federal government to pay more attention to municipalities when they are licensing these growers, and ensure that they conform to local zoning bylaws and other control bylaws that are in place at the area municipalities, ensuring that notification is provided to the lower tiers, and in trying to improve communications and give police the tools they need to deal with these issues. Again, it's an issue that we have been dealing with at the township. It's a widespread issue, and again, staff would suggest or recommend that council consider supporting the correspondence from Brock as Port Colborne did.
Okay, if anybody's willing to make that motion, we can move on that. Councillor Gilmore, and seconded by Councillor Van Vliet, that we support that correspondence. Any other discussion? Anything we can do to deal with this issue is always good. Every little bit helps. Councillor McClellan, you had your hand up?
No, I was trying to second it, but I got beat.
Okay. Okay, opposed or in favor? Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
And Councillor Quidland.
In favor.
And that is carried. Okay, and now we're moving on to C-136 2021, Niagara Central Dorothy Rungling Airport Governance and Ownership. Is there any discussion on this item of correspondence? And I'll look to our Deputy Clerk to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to all of council. So this item of correspondence was received by the City of Welland on April 27th, respecting the uptake of governance for the Niagara District Airport and Niagara Central Dorothy Rungling Airport. It was considered by Welland Council. It was brought to Pelham Council, and the motion was withdrawn pending further information. And it has yet to go to Port Colborne Council. So we know that there is quickly evolving information about the airports going to the Niagara region for consideration. And staff suggests that council pass a motion tonight to receive the correspondence and direct staff to assemble additional information and be brought back to council at the next available meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLeod. We'll look to have the motion first, and then we can have discussion.
Yep.
So the motion is as Councillor McLeod. Go ahead.
Yep. No, I was
making the motion.
I was making.
Yes, and seconded, Councillor Gilmore. And is there any discussion, Councillor McLeod?
So after reading today's Tribune or yesterday's Tribune, the City of Niagara Falls has pulled the request for the region to uptake the airport. They're going to go to a public-private partnership and run it. So my guess is there'll be no interest in anybody taking the Welland Airport. It was a second thought after taking the Niagara North. So I'm guessing nothing's going to happen with it, but I'm just passing that along.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion? Anybody want to? Councillor McCollum?
The motion to receive this.
Okay, and you already made the motion.
Yeah.
Right, so, okay, any other discussion? Receive it and to, right. Opposed or in favor? Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Quidland?
In favor.
And Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
And that's carried. Okay, C-146 2021, NR CAN Growing Canada's Forests 2 Billion Trees Funding Initiative. Request for information. Any discussion on that? Will, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, through council, not too long ago, the township was called to join a meeting with the NPCA as well as the other area municipalities in Niagara region regarding a possible joint venture to try and participate in Canada's 2 billion trees initiative. Again, that is a funding opportunity available Canada-wide to encourage tree planting, reforestation, and a variety of other conservation opportunities with respect to preserving the tree canopy and making the climate that much better. The NPCA followed up with this information letter and request for support. And what we are, I suppose, asking at this time is that the township commit to sort of investigating this potential partnership moving forward by supporting the idea in principle and issuing a letter, a slightly modified letter. It won't be exact form contained in this document, but it'll be darn close, indicating that our interest of exploring this potential opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Anybody wish to make a motion? Councillor Cridland?
I could make the motion and then we could still consider with discussion. So I would move that we support this in principle. I'll move that.
Okay, seconder?
Sure.
Councillor McClellan. Okay, and discussion. Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, Mayor. I'll tie this back to, if there becomes a financial component, which that's not on the table. I realize that. But again, we are in the, I'll say, very fortunate position through the destruction of trees. So that's a bit of an oxymoron, but I will still look for that to come forward because we have unfinished business in that area that could help us perhaps consider this after we hear more about it. So I'll look to see what that kind of opportunity is and continue to watch for that to come forward out of the reserve fund money. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussions? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I have no problem supporting this. I'd like to see that, where we plant these trees is on public land so that it's, along the side of roads or streets or park areas and stuff like that. So we create shade spots and we help the climate. But so that's what I'm kind of hoping we're going to do with this on our end of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we vote to support? Seeing none, opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. Are there any other correspondence issues anyone would like to look at or discuss? Okay, seeing none. We move into bylaws here. The following bylaws will be read and passed this 11th day of May 2021. Bylaw number 16, 2021 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 73, 2019 being a bylaw for maintenance of yards in the Township of Wainfleet. And bylaw 17, 2021 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 27, 2019 being a bylaw to establish an administrative monetary penalty system for non-parking related offenses. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Cridland. Any discussion on those two bylaws? Seeing none, opposed or in favor? Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Okay, that is carried. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. We didn't finish our meeting at 6 p.m. We have a couple more items to do with closed session. Sorry.
Forgot.
So we have a motion to move into closed session, please. Councillor McClellan seconded. Councillor Gilmore. Okay, any questions? And in favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore,
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Okay, we'll now move back into closed session. And we have to sign out and come back in on the other Zoom thing. So we'll see you in about 2 minutes.